Otherwise, it'll be very memorable. Okay. And a discrete feedback.
Everyone's here. Just a couple of housekeeping rules first. If you do have water, we ask that you just put it on the floor and not on the tables. But I am wanting to welcome you. I'm Claire Bell. I'm the Associate Director of the Wallach Division here at the library. And while you're in one of our reading rooms here, we're happy to have you. This is a reading room where we serve over 1 million photographs and prints. In all, the Wallach Division is made up of 5 divisions. We have a general collection that serves books on art and architecture, and that's off our main reading room. And then we have downstairs our picture collection, which is a circulating collection, and that represents over 12,000 subjects from 1900s to the present day. And we really do encourage you to come and get a library card. If you don't have one, you can get one online at NYPL.org, or you can visit one of the 92 branches and walk away with the library card. We really do, I don't think you'll ever regret it. It really invites you to programs like this. And what I want to say is that tonight's collaboration with our longtime community and creative partners, 10 by 10 photo books, offers us all of this potential for learning. And it's my great privilege to welcome you and introduce Russ Ederman, whose organization really helps us open those kind of doors. So.
Hi, I'm Russ Ederman, for those of you who don't know me. I run 10 by 10 photo books with Mariette, who's in the booth, sitting right over here. Dave Salon is our manager of grants. Karen manages our salons, and Jeff Gutterman is on the video recording and does our photography. And we have 2 work scholars, Shay Bosch and Queenie Shen. We're happy to be hosting this salon in collaboration with the Miriam and Ira D Wallach Division of the New York Public Library. So a big thank you to Claire Bell, who is the Associate Director, and her team and colleagues of Elizabeth Cronin, who you will hear from, who's over there, who will moderate the conversation after the presentations, and Deirdre Donahue, Maggie Mustard, Chantal Lee, Zulai Chang, all of them help make this possible. So we are very grateful to the team at the Wallach Division. For those of you who don't know 10 by 10, I won't bore you. I'll give you the very quick spiel, which is we are a community-oriented organization that advocates for the engagement with the photo book through a focus on contemporary practice and overlooked publications in photo books histories. If you like what we do, you can always donate or buy one of our publications at 10x10photobooks.org. So thank you for joining us tonight's presentations with Mariette Pathy and Carmen Winant. We're looking forward to hearing from both Mariette and Carmen, whose photo books have been documented in 10 by 10's 2 most recent anthologies, What They Saw, Historical Photo Books by Women, and Flashpoint Protest Photography in Print. Mariette is going to go first, and she's going to be followed by Carmen. So I'm going to introduce each one of them individually. After their presentations, there will be a discussion and Q&A with the 2 artists, moderated by Elizabeth Cronin, who is the Robert B. Menschel Curator of Photography. So a reminder, please turn off your cell phones or silence them. And if you do need to leave, Zulai at the back is going to have to unlock the door for you. So quietly make your way to the back and she'll let you out. We have you captive actually for the next hour and 15 minutes. So I am now pleased to welcome Mariette Pathy, who has been photographing transgender communities for nearly 5 decades and pioneering visibility through 5 books: Transformations, Crossdressers, and Those Who Love Them, from 1989. And there, I should mention there's a portfolio of her photographs in the back from the Transformation series. So on your way out, you can take a look at that. She's also done The Gender Frontier, 2003, Trans Cuba, 2014, Transcendence, 2017, and most recently, I Was Girl, from 2024. Her work is in numerous major collections and has been exhibited internationally and is being archived by Duke University. Beyond gender, Ellen has a number of series exploring family, birth, juxtapositions, fantasy, and everyday life. She lives in New York City and is represented by the Plant Gallery. So please welcome Mariette.
Well, hello. I'm going to do a slideshow unlike any that I've ever done before, because almost all my slideshows, I call it slideshows, that's nostalgia. Usually I just show trans work, but today I'm going to focus on the body in different ways. That will include trans work, but I'm starting this way. And I call this picture the last gender-free moment. I usually use it to begin my trans images, but in this case, I thought it could work, have a double duty. So this photograph was taken at the maternity center in New York City in the 70s, I ended up working there for individuals who wanted photographs of their births, and quite a few did. It was not in the time of video so much. Now, what was special about the maternity center is that it was nurse midwives who catered to the whole family. So at that time, in most cases, births occurred in a hospital and the father wasn't allowed in. It was a very tough environment by comparison to the maternity center, which was like a home. Different rooms, nicely decorated, like somebody's apartment. And the family was encouraged to be there. And, well, I'll show you some more. Now this birth, unfortunately, could not be done at the maternity center. But one thing that you'll notice in all of these birth pictures, the involvement of the father, which was extremely important and was not done in hospitals. Now it's much looser, and sometimes there are maternity centers within the hospital. But you see the idea that children could also be there for such an important occasion and not be frightened. Yeah. So couples could lie in bed together and enjoy their as compared to this. This is much more of a typical hospital setting. But I want to say that this starts images of transgender. I always think that birth and gender transformation are the happiest experiences compared to most times when one has to go to the hospital. It's not usually a happy concept. So I'm going to show you a series of changes transgender changes. This is in a private office. There are surgeons now who will operate they have their own setup, their own offices. And so this is a facial feminization surgery. And this, these 6 pictures show you the beginning, the process, and then the end, which was not completely the end, but she was still healing. But there. You can see what he was trying to do to her. So this is in a lovely little hospital in Trinidad, Colorado, where there was a famous doctor who was really the first one to do gender transformation surgery. So what I like about this picture is that you see the 2 kinds of medicine parallel. One is Western, the usual drip, and the other is the feather, the Native American person who was a medicine man and transitioned to be a medicine woman. And so she knew how to create the ceremony for people who are about to have surgery. And this is another example. In this case, it's not just the change of the body, but also the sense of self that changed in this case, which you can actually see. It's as if Tony sort of became militant. He wasn't really, but that's how he chose to be for his second picture. Now there's something, this is, I don't know if you're getting this, but this really is all about what happens, what can happen to the body. And so this picture, Stop Intersex Genital Mutilation, that's an issue that has been around forever, because what happens is if a baby is born with genitalia that it's not clear what they are, usually it's the surgeon who then advises the parents what to do. And they do it. They try to make the baby look like either a boy or a girl. More frequently like a girl. But the child never has an opportunity to decide for themselves what they want to be, who they want to be. And usually the parents never tell them. So there was a movement that started in the 90s by an organization founded by a person who had had surgery and never knew, sort of went sleuthing at one point about it and found out. So she started a movement, and you can see somebody crying over roses. Roses were symbolic of what was lost. So this was an event in front of a hospital, and all these people were not necessarily intersex themselves, but wanted to show support, counseling, not cutting, stop intersex genital mutilation. So now I'm going to continue with individual stories. This is Steve Dane, who was Doris, lived in California, and was a gym teacher in working with boys and girls. When Doris transitioned to Steve, she was not allowed, he was not allowed to work in the school anymore. And so had to find another work, another kind of work. He actually became a chiropractor. And this is a recent picture of John, and from it you can see that he has had chest reduction surgery and is perfectly comfortable with it. What's the time? This is James Green, who was probably the best known F to M, female to male in the world. He has done incredible things, and you can see his whimsical sense of humor. Okay, here are Max and Jake. They started out as a lesbian couple in the Midwest. In fact, Max's name was Peggy Sue, which I mean, is pretty cruel. Anyway. So they felt that they couldn't stay in the Midwest, that it wasn't right, it wasn't safe for them really. So they moved to Florida, and at a certain point, Max started to feel like he wanted to transition, and he did. And so at that point, it looked like a heterosexual couple. However, after a while, Jake wanted to transition too. So suddenly it was a gay male couple. And then they broke up. And Maxwell continued on and fell in love. That it was a wonderful relationship while it lasted, with Corey, who was a drag queen who worked in a nightclub. And she was a really wonderful person. With this picture, I always think the dog is leaving because he's embarrassed. But so anyway, that lasted a long time. It was quite a passionate relationship. And ultimately, Corey decided she really wanted to be with a regular man. But this is a picture of Max shaving her legs. This picture is a mother and daughter. This is to tell you that even in the early days, there were plenty of relatives who were accepting of their children, even though most, you wouldn't say that about most. And in this is a poignant picture because Jen knew her mother had cancer and was going to die probably in about 6 months. This is a couple that I have followed for years, Bridget and Tiffany. And Tiffany had taken some hormones for so many years that she couldn't function sexually to produce a child. So they found a donor they looked for somebody who looked like Tiffany, who was half Spanish, Latinx, I should say, and they had their first baby. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. Whoops, again. So this is Tiffany 4 years later, and once again, Bridget got pregnant and this time had twins. So, and the twins were very difficult. So that's what you're seeing here, Tiffany with her crying twins. If one cried, the other cried. It was just that way. And and there were things that were one of them was autistic. And the other one, well, in any case, they survived, the marriage survived, and now they have 3 terrific children. I'm just finishing with some different people. There were these balls in Harlem that you might have heard about them, and they were wonderful people, generally speaking, Black or Latinx, who had contests of all kinds, which were fascinating. I was very privileged to be able to spend time with them. And I was showing this picture because of the whole bathroom issue and the irony of it here. Mostly the people at the balls had maybe hormones, but not any kind of surgery. And this is my last picture. It was taken during the balls. They would go from 12 to 12, midnight to noon. And I had, at one point, it was early in the morning, I asked Raquel, would you mind going out? I need a little fresh air and a little light. So we did. And look, I mean, that's one of the reasons people can be happy to be photographers. This man came jogging by just at that moment. And between Jim Jensen's tie and the jogger's outfit and what did I say her name was? Raquel. I couldn't have planned this any better. So that's it for pictures, but I guess there are a few. So I can speak for a few minutes, or are we ready to?
2 minutes, go for it.
Yeah. Never mind.
No, please.
Well, the attitudes towards the body. I feel like we're moving into a Victorian age now, where people are afraid of the body. I feel like, at this point, maybe men would think they're too macho to be in a situation where their wives or girlfriends are giving birth. And the women generally very often think that if they give birth in front of their husbands, he will be disgusted and maybe not want to have sex with them. And so I wanted to present men who were happy to be there. And I think you can choose for yourself. There are so many issues that I brought up in these pictures that are actually worse nowadays. I mean, if people are not allowed, well, maybe I'll leave this. Maybe it's obvious what things will be lost if the situation goes on as it is. So, thank you.
We'll have time for more questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a little chair switching, so Carmen can be in front. Thank you very much, Miriam. That was really wonderful. And
Is this the
Elizabeth
first
is
one?
going to
Yeah.
ask questions,
Oh.
as well as you will have the
Can I
opportunity to
just
ask
see if
questions
it lags
once
a
Carmen
second?
is
Oh,
done.
no. No, it's not. You're right.
So while they're doing the
Sorry.
setup of
Thanks.
the PowerPoint,
You're the one who knows your slideshow.
so now let's please welcome Carmen Winant, an artist and the Roy Lichtenstein Chair of Studio Art at the Ohio State University. Her work utilizes archival and authored photographs to examine feminist care networks, with particular emphasis on intergenerational, multiracial, and sometimes transnational coalition building. Winant is a 2019 Guggenheim Fellow in Photography, a 2020 FCA Artist Honoree, and a 2021 American Academy of Arts and Letters Award recipient. She's also a community organizer, prison educator, and mother of her 2 children, Carlo and Rafa, shared with her partner Luke Stettner. Her recent publications include My Birth, 2018, and The Last Safe Abortion, 2024. And if you didn't realize, many of the books are on the end of this table, so when the Q&A is done, please, if we have time, take a look at them and browse through them, or come back with your library card. Take them to the library. So please welcome Carmen.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me, for inviting me, for coming out. Tonight I live in Columbus, Ohio, so it's a real thrill to be in this big city. I'm going to be talking about one project in particular, although it takes a couple of shapes, as you'll see. I just thought for this amount of time, it might be good to, to sort of land my focus in one spot. And also, as you'll see, the projects tend to be sort of time intensive. So it's a way to kind of like mirror that more capacious or kind of like lateral yield. So that project is The Last Safe Abortion. I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to see how far I get. I'm also going to move kind of quickly. So this is sort of by way of introduction to say that this is how the piece looked in the Whitney Biennial, which came down a few months ago, and it held about 2,700 photographs. And this is how the book version of it looked, which I think is on the table. I'm going to be taking those on one at a time. I'm actually going to be starting with the book and focusing most of my attention on the book because of the nature of this event and the organizers. And also because I don't usually get to talk about books, even though they're such a bedrock of my practice. They're just harder to like engage in this context and on PowerPoint, and it seemed like this would be, if there was ever a group to talk to about photo books, this would be it. I don't want to spend too much time on this image. I always hesitate whether or not to show pictures like this, but it's such an important sort of inflection point for where this project began. I work on a university campus at OSU, which is the largest university in the country, and as with probably university campuses all over the country, but particularly maybe in the South and Midwest, I'm confronted like near weekly, semi-weekly with anti-abortion crusaders, and they set up with, this is from a photograph I made in Wichita outside of a clinic, but by way of example, they set up, with big sandwich boards with enormous photographs on them. Like this is a very familiar, super streamlined, strategic move that has been, was actually put in place, sort of architected by a couple, some people might be familiar in Cincinnati, a Catholic couple, in the early 1970s. And so I would like literally circumnavigate these folks on my way to teach photography in the building behind. So I began to think, sort of increasingly about how photographs are weaponized, right? Not just utilized, but weaponized by social movements. In this case, anti-abortion activists, let's say propagandists, and thinking about like the absence of images in my movement, which is to say reproductive justice. Like, where were our pictures and what would that look like? So I started in the Midwest where I live, as I said, and I began to, in some cases, like cold call clinics, although that's very tricky because, for obvious reasons, like they're so vulnerable, they're under constant threat, they don't want to just let anybody in the door. So it really helped that I have been in this work for a long time as an organizer and sort of sometimes activist or advocate around the Midwest. So I already knew people in a number of clinics. And I think that without that, I don't think that it would have been an impossible project, but would have been a lot slower going. That shared trust sort of just precipitated the beginning of the process in a way that just like paid out in dividends, then they would sort of recommend me to their friends in other states and other clinics. But it was a project, these are just two screen grabs to demonstrate of so many, like how can I put this? Like, it was a project that lives so relentlessly in the present. I've never worked on a project like this, in large part because I'm so interested in like the historical past, particularly like mid 20th century radical social movements, particularly feminism, and so it always feels like there's time to visit the clinic, or there's time to sort of get to know folks. This was really the opposite, like clinics were shuttering between emails and phone calls. So I want to talk a little bit about the buckets from which I drew to make the project. One was institutional collections. Which I have sort of grown increasingly comfortable working inside of. I used to be allergic to this and really feel like it was just so, I didn't want to go to what had already been gatekept. Like I wanted to find sort of like grassroots archives or assemble my own archives, which is what I sort of thought of building kind of outlaw archives. But I don't have enough time to get into this. Maybe we can talk about it in Q&A. But like I rapidly discovered that was like a made up distinction. For lots of reasons, and that my practice and my own understanding, if anything, could only be sort of deepened by crisscrossing between them. So this is the Iowa Women's Archive in Iowa City, which holds, this is about a third of their collection of the Emma Goldman Clinic papers. Some of you might be familiar with this clinic in Iowa City that's been around now for 50 years. They're facing now very draconian laws in Iowa. The main source of material and frankly just like intel and relationship building was the clinics themselves, unsurprisingly. I wish I had better pictures of this. It's sort of hard to get pictures that feel dynamic. But this is in Preterm, which is the oldest abortion clinic in Ohio. It's in Cleveland. And just passed its 50th year celebration, as with a lot of these clinics that opened in like between 73 and 75. And this was where I knew folks because I live in Ohio, as I said. So they invited me to come to their office. Neither of us really sort of knew what I was looking for or what the potential yield could be, but they had boxes and boxes, of basically like 4x6 prints and photographs. I imagine people in the room remember this. I certainly do as a child of the 80s, like, dropping your film off at the drugstore and getting it back in the envelope, and the paper envelope that had like the slip in front for, where they would cut the negatives. So it was like just lots of piles and piles and piles, often not labeled or just with one or two words. And they were just like carting them out of the basement, out of people's offices. They weren't centralized or otherwise organized, but there were really thousands of them. And I felt like if these pictures existed there in this one clinic, like where else could they be? Surely there were more. And it was just such an unfamiliar kind of photograph. In some ways, like, what could be more familiar, Getting pap smears and breast exams and having 2 kids or I had an abortion between my kids. Like, it feels very, very familiar. And on the other hand, I just felt like I'd never seen pictures from clinics before, you know? And like, even when I went to these institutional archives, well, this is an exception, but you know, you search, like on the database, if you search abortion or abortion clinic, it's like really agitated pictures that surface. You know, it's pictures of clinics that have been firebombed, pictures of like cops confronting Operation Rescue, agitators, you know, it's just like, it's like a terrified space. And so it was really incredible to come into these kinds of pictures, which really sort of began to form the central question of the project for me, which was as simple as this sounds, like, what is the visuality of abortion care? And for me, it was so much about the abortion care workers, which is, you know, absolutely what is voided in that first, you know, redacted photograph that I showed you. Like, they're like these, you know, like floating spacemen, right? Like, they're completely detached from their mother, the birthing person's body. There's no science, there's no labor, there's no care. So like, I really wanted to figure out a way to make address of that question visually with pictures like this. I also made pictures. This is the third bucket. This is a sort of silly slide, but I wanted to find a way to demonstrate like a kind of an opener for the third bucket. I also made photographs in the clinics, which I didn't start out doing. I'm trained in photography, and I still in some ways consider myself to be a photographer, but loosely. I teach photography, like I said, but it just had been years since I had really photographed in a dedicated way for a project. So this didn't come until quite late in the project, and I was just amazed by, I mean, there's no big enough word for it, like the courage of people who do this work, not only just in coming to work every day and walking through a metal detector and, you know, being doxxed and whatever the case, but like their willingness to be photographed. Not everybody wanted that, but most people did. And I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but when I showed the installation version of this at the Whitney, you know, we had a wall text, and I asked who wanted to be credited, and, you know, I thought maybe some of them wouldn't want their name on, you know, on the didactic, and they all did. They all wanted as much information as possible in a forward-facing way. So these photographs that I made are like, they're really meant to be seen in sum. You know, like, I've never thought of my photographic work, whether I'm making it or collecting it, as being singular images. But it's hard to like show that in a legible way. But yeah, so you can sort of appreciate these, I would hope, sort of as part of a larger set. This last one is in Cleveland and Iowa City. This one is in Minnesota. So I went to 7 different clinics, and the clinics, I started in the Midwest, as I said, and then I sort of moved into the South, particularly into Atlanta. And one thing that I found sort of over and over in the archive, and I also made photographs over and over of, incidentally, was pictures of women answering the phone, which to me sort of came to just be like a sort of keystone or placeholder for the entire project, or a symbol or something that, like, you know, it's like the least photographic act possible. You know, like, what could be less dynamic to look at? And it's also like the most imperative, the most life-saving, you know, like, this to me is feminist solidarity, like healthcare work, coalition building. It's like, this is how we sort of work for each other, you know, in mutual aid and mutual care. Like, there has to be somebody, however obvious it sounds, to answer the other end of the line. And the phones are, in fact, ringing off the hook. Like, they put the phone down and it rings again, and they answer it all day. This is like, I was like, should I put this picture in? It's definitely embarrassing. This is my studio, which is, as you can probably see, my 2-car garage. It looks a little bit better than this now, but I often work this way. I really like to be honest and transparent about how things look on the inside. Like, I have 2 small children. They're often coming in and like messing things up, and I'm trying to like find time around the edges. to do the thing, plus I'm just not very tidy. So it like kind of just bleeds off onto the floor, and I've told myself at least that this is like a productive way to work because, you know, like different kinds of accidental convergences can happen. So what I'm doing here is like I've printed out 4x6s from all prints, you know, just like drugstore prints, from these 3 different buckets, and I'm making arrangements of them. And I'm just going to run through sort of really quickly to give you a sense of how these photographs feel together. These are not actually the sequences for the book, but I scanned them all in order so I could have a map for the people. The work was first shown at the Minneapolis Institute of Art and then the Whitney, so this was actually for the Minneapolis show. So I actually could know what sequence and sort of build a map. I'll show you how I sequenced them for the book similarly in a moment. This is Donna Ferrato, if anybody knows her, who's from Cleveland, in fact. So this gives you a sense, you know, of kind of like how the pictures feel together. And as you can probably see, just the range, not just of the substance of the photographs, but you know, they're just like photographs, photography, you know, it's like, it's so beautiful. It's like sepia and black and white, and it's like light leaked and chemistry spilled and over and underexposed, and like, there's just such like an incredible, like almost haptic range, which I was very moved by when they all came together. And the color, was really vital actually in the end, that would feel so vibrant, and, you know, not like dark or foreboding. So I'm going to move into talking about, how am I doing for time?
You're
5 minutes left. Okay, I have to move quickly. This is me in the studio sort of laying out for the book in groups of 4. This is how we photographed it. This is like my kids' playroom, basically. And we photographed it on top of this colored paper, which I'll talk about in a minute. And this was the device that we used because we had to put glass on top of it to hold it flush. So we cut a hole in the foam board. I guess it was like a real lo-fi operation, as everything with me. Here we are printing the book. It got printed in Venice. I was not on site, it would have been nice, but I think it's always sort of nice to see a book deconstructed in this way. This is what the book looks like. I only found this image later and was sort of like stunned by its, you know, it's like identical color and image ratio. I don't know how interesting these images are, but like there's just, you know, when you're collaborating on a book, there's so many decisions to be made, and I'm like incredibly grateful. The publisher, Bruno, and the designer, Brian, are like very good friends, have become very good friends. We went hiking in the Alps 2 summers ago, and skinny dipped in, you know, like an alpine lake. So it's really nice to be able to work in that way with folks I care about and have come to trust. This I wanted to include as a reference, actually. This is from the Loretta J. Ross collection at Smith College, and folks are probably familiar with Loretta J. Ross as like a real architect of reproductive justice in this country. I'm using it as an example to demonstrate that, I don't know, folks have requested, we're in a library. If you request material from libraries, they often scan it for you for a fee, and they scan it usually on this really, really bright paper. I'm assuming to like distinguish foreground from background. And I've always really loved that move and found it so like playful, however incidental. And so I brought that in to the book. And they scan sometimes 4 to a page at this size too, because that's what you can fit on a 9x12 scanner bed, which is like a standard scanner bed. And then we stuck with the spiral binding, which is, I wish I had a photograph of this, but so much material from the clinics is still bound this way, like the cheapest way possible. And as you can see, like I tried to, different from the installation, I tried to sort of keep sets together or tell almost like, sounds kind of trite, but like little stories or vignettes, you know, could be maintained in this way that couldn't in the installation. If we have time in the Q&A, I'll talk about this story, which is so tender. Okay, I'm running out of time. I just have a few more minutes, so I'm going to run through The rest of these spreads, the other thing was like they would be, recto and verso would be the same color, you know, so it would feel like you were staying on the same sort of physical page. And then here we are installing the work at Minneapolis and New York. This is a view from the scissor lift. So I'd like kind of package them, you know, 64 or something in order. And then people make these, I mean, even Meg, the curator, you know, like everybody is like making these tape rolls, which is how they go directly on the wall, as lo-fi as could be. There's always a worry that they're going to get ripped off the wall, but they never do. I'm going to blow through these. This is another installation that's up now at Bemis. I'm not quite sure. It's with the same material, and I don't know. I'm not quite sure if it works or. I'd be curious to hear what other people think. I just wanted to explode it a little bit. Like this always felt a little bit rigid and kind of like architectonic. So this was an attempt to do otherwise. I wanted to end on this image. This is my mother in the middle in the denim skirt. I found this photograph in the research, in the Our Bodies, Ourselves papers at the Schlesinger at Radcliffe towards the very end, and it just really felt like, to use your word from earlier, Matt, like it really felt like kismet. So I thought it would be a nice way to end this presentation. Thank you. I knew I was putting in the slides.
So, why don't you guys get closer together? Elizabeth, I'm going to join you. So please welcome Elizabeth Cronin. She's going to moderate a discussion between Carmen and Mariette, and there will also be time for questions.
Hi everyone, welcome. I think I'm mostly gonna let everyone else ask questions because you both have given us so many interesting things to think about. But one thing that I thought would be interesting to start off, if you could both tell us how you got into these projects, because I've heard your answer before and it's really interesting.
Well, my transgender work started in 1978. I was in New Orleans for Mardi Gras, and I came down for breakfast on the last day of Mardi Gras, and there was a table with the most interesting looking people. They were wearing gowns and fabulous wigs and makeup, and this was on a Sunday at noon or so. I'd never seen anything like that. And they asked me if I'd like to join them for breakfast. And of course I did. And then after breakfast, they walked out of the dining room and there was a swimming pool outside of the dining room. And they started walking around the swimming pool and then stood in a line and stopped. And one person from the group was taking pictures of them. So I thought, I wonder if it would be okay for me to take a picture. So I lifted the camera to my eyes, and in this row of people, the one right in the middle was looking back at me. The others were all sort of looking around, but the one in the middle, and I had this incredible feeling like this is not a man or a woman, this is the essence of a human being. And I said to myself, I have to have this person in my life. Her name was Vicki West, and one of the books there is about her. She was an artist, and she sort of took me under her wings, plural, and took me everywhere that she went as Vicki. She was a cross-dresser, so she had a full life as her male self as well. So through Vicki, I got to know more and more of the community. There used to be conferences and gatherings of all kinds all over the country. And gradually, I felt like I was almost, well, when I speak about it, it sounds like I was taking a course. I was learning all the time. It was fabulous. I'm so grateful that this fluke happened, and it has given me purpose, a big purpose. In my goal has been to make the people relatable, and that's what I have tried to do in my work. Relatable not only to the people themselves, but to the outside world. I could go on, but I will stop here.
I can be brief and say that I was very lucky to grow up in a feminist home with a parent who worked in reproductive health care and, feminist sort of public health. So it was kind of the water I was swimming in, and I have always understood abortion care and, in a larger way, reproductive justice, like, just to be the bedrock of my feminist thinking and practice. Like, without bodily autonomy and dignity and agency and mobility, there is nothing. There's nothing. And, we see this extend in every which direction. So I am only radicalized by the day on that front, and living in Ohio all the more so.
I was curious if you each had questions for each other.
Oh.
Or I'm going to put you on the spot. If you don't, that's fine. But I was kind of, because I was watching each of your sort of facial expressions as the other person was talking. So, no? Yes? Sorry.
Put me on the spot here.
I know.
That's interesting.
I will say that the first picture that you showed, this isn't exactly a question, but of the baby being born in 1983 is the year that I was born. So I felt I was being born in the beginning of your presentation. It's just sort of, this is again not a question, but you're talking about beginning this work in the 70s. Obviously,
70s,
like trans visibility there was no language. I don't have to tell you this. No movement. So that feels almost impossible to wrap my head around. The timeline.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, one of the things that has been exciting for me is the evolution of a movement, which I was able to be part of. Mm-hmm. Not just taking pictures, but also living with people. And participating in all kinds of political activities. And I felt that this was my calling. Not to say I didn't do lots of other work, but I'm very impressed that your work was chosen for the Whitney and for all sorts of wonderful places. And I feel like you're as passionate about your work. Couldn't be more so, right? So, but what is your next project? Which is the horrible question everybody asks.
Well, actually, this work is going to the Museum of Modern Art in Poland. Yeah.
Wow.
In Warsaw. So that feels like the best possible outcome.
Yeah.
I would say. Although they just had elections and they are now moving even farther to the right. They sort of came to the middle and then went back to the right. So there's questions of whether that will happen. But that feels thrilling to me, considering their abortion resistance front, which is so mobilized.
Yeah.
More so now than ever. So that is on the immediate future, and then Beyond that, I'm returning to a project that I've been working on off and on for years, since 2020, on domestic violence. Similar, like care workers, advocates, like the people who are on the ground doing the work, which I find myself, it's funny, it's like you don't plot these things out, but then, of course, you are yourself everywhere, as a therapist of mine used to say. So, so I'm returning to that project in some new ways. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
I can open it up to questions from the audience? Yes.
Hi, this is a question for Carmen. I have two, that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you know why these photographs were taken? And there's such a wide variety of subject matter. And then I guess my second question is, when you were in your garage and it just looks so quiet and so you were locked in. I'm just kind of wondering what sort of thoughts were bubbling up in your head as you had everything laid out.
That's funny that you think it looks quiet. I mean, I look at that for one thing and I see such a cacophonous visual mess. But also, as I mentioned, it's a two-car garage that's attached to my house, so my kids are frequently trespassing. So it is.
I thought it was the middle of the night.
Yeah, I do work at night sometimes for that reason. To take your second question first, I guess. That's the very final phase of the project. It's the most dynamic one to look at, but it's in fact the last 10% of the work. And so at that point, I spent so much time getting to know folks and could recite where every photograph is from and who's in it and if they're still living, and that's a whole other part of this. That once I'm in that phase, it's almost administrative, which isn't very sexy to talk about, but it's almost like the work has already been done, So it's just a matter of kind of sequencing and packaging, almost like the way you would pack up sort of any project that was rounding out. But yes, there's a lot of disturbances, my belly button hurts, And then the first part of the question, it's so interesting because so much of the photographs that they were making, I learned this along the way, were photographs in service of teaching and learning, something that they often refer to as storytelling. So 99% of the time, it's actually other staffers and clinic workers who are posing, having a vacuum aspiration or being fitted for a diaphragm or whatever the case, so they can make photographs of it, so they can actually educate people as to what it looks like. So it's this whole performative, almost theatrical thing that they're doing that's so self-reflexive. And then they hold on to the photographs. So presumably they were in a brochure or, material that they could distribute. And then there's other photographs staff birthday parties and, hanging out with their kids at the park. So it's kind of a combination of those things, which I found to be, just so progressive and forward thinking, the way that they were treating photography as a community tool, really.
Well, I thought of that because they had this sort of science fair,
Sandwich
board.
Yeah, a lot of sandwich board photographs. Yes.
And then I'm actually really glad that, even though it was just sort of administrative, because obviously every photo has such a deep meaning, but just you listing out, is this person alive, who are they, all these personal details about their lives was a level that just looking through the book, didn't occur to me at first, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Back there? Yeah. Yes.
I have a question for both of you. Mariette, you mentioned that somebody mentioned your work's being archived at Duke. I was curious how many images are in your archive and what it's been like for you to go through the process of archiving that. And Carmen, while your work is kind of anti-institutional archives or kind of folk archives, would you ever contemplate putting the full corpus of your collections of imagery in an accessible archive?
Yeah, go first.
Well, I have my assistant here, Jessie, is in the process. Well, how many pictures do I have?
The rough estimation is over 100,000. Yeah.
And so we're trying to make order out of this all. Duke University has, Duke University is taking a lot of it, but I'm also going to keep a certain amount with me. And I think that I will divide up some other areas that Duke isn't interested in having to other places. I discovered, somewhat sadly, that Duke won't take everything. They only will take certain documentary images, but nothing that isn't released. And my early pictures of the births, I have a whole collection of them. They won't take it. But if you think, because I never got releases, but can you think how long ago that was? In the 70s, nobody was even thinking about it. Plus, they hired me. The people who I photographed wanted their births photographed, so it's not like they're about to sue me or their family would sue me. I feel like it's a very innocent thing, but nevertheless they won't take it. So I have to look in other places for other situations where where the rest of the things will be accepted. Does that answer your, yeah?
I mean, nobody has asked me, I would say. And there would be such like a poetry to that, you know, considering that the work starts in archives, so much of it of different kinds. Where my work is sort of safest, I think, and where it has lived like much more than through commercial galleries is in institutional collections, which I appreciate, but, you know, museums, that is to say. But it is, and libraries. I mean, like Whitney or the MoMA or whatever, it's like, you saw how I live. Like, they can take so much better care of it, but it's also so, there's such weird dissonance for me because, like, the process is so funky, you know, and I'm, like, walking on top of pictures, or I remember with my birth, the project I worked on in 2018, like, my kids, like, walking and they're, like, licking, you know, pictures, and, like, then I walk in to, you know, the, like, have you ever been to the MoMA, like the fridge and the freezer? You know, you like put on the heavy jacket and you're wearing white gloves and they show you how they're housing everything archivally, and like, I appreciate it, but it's just like, couldn't be farther from how I worked it. So we'll see what happens, I guess. Yeah.
Russet?
I want to kind of go back to this discussion of institutional, particularly now. I mean, with the circulation of your books and the topics that they cover, we've talked about the institutions that have embraced and supported the work. Have you found the opposite? And I'm talking about libraries, universities. I mean, have you encountered at this point, either in past or more recently, reluctance given the topics?
Would you repeat the question?
Yeah, so if institutions if you've encountered reluctance on institutions to take your work because of the topic, or museums to show it because of the topic. I think the question's for both of you.
More
Yeah.
with the books, which
Yeah.
circulate
Oh.
outside
Yes.
of the kind of museum or curated world, but that are in a more generalized audience of libraries and schools.
Don't quite get it.
Were your books ever banned?
Were your books ever banned?
Were your books ever banned or not wanted?
They will be. Well, I should say this. In the beginning, I could not get my work shown practically anywhere. I didn't have a gallery representing me. Generally, people, weren't thrilled with the topic, although sometimes they changed their mind as they looked at the pictures because it wasn't what they thought they were going to see. The people themselves couldn't see images of themselves except in porn shops and doctors' diagrams in textbooks. And neither worked for most of them. I mean, they didn't identify with those kinds of, the ones in medical books, they were essentially very insulting in that the people were just, again, objects. They were not people. They were just sort of measurements and how many hormones and, this doctor did that. It was just, it was pretty cruel. And so when I was saying before that I was really part of a movement and we were moving so far, so good, so well, and now, of course, you all know that it's being shut down and worse almost than the way it used to be.
So
At the worst.
they were happy with your portraits because...
The people themselves,
Yeah, because
they were
it changed.
thrilled.
Yeah.
They passed my book around as if it were their yearbook. And they were so thrilled, first of all, that I was, a young woman on there. I was being supportive. I was helping them to find their inner person, the one they wanted to be or wanted to relate to, in my photography. I worked in, it wasn't just, here's a picture. I really worked with the people to help them find the person that was hiding inside of them. What was the question?
It was a good answer, don't worry.
I would say that I'm kind of surprised I haven't been met with more resistance. As I said, the work is up now in Nebraska, so in some ways it's a self-selecting crowd. In other ways, when I showed the work in Minneapolis, there was a lot of 11th hour squeamishness. They wanted me to change the title of the show, and I really wanted to have abortion in the title of the show. They wanted me to take out photographs that, there was a discussion about whether I should take out photographs that could potentially be seen to be depicting abortion, and the curator was really advocated for me, and I advocated for myself. I would say, as far as the book goes, it's interesting. It started as a book idea for me, and I had a really hard time getting it made. And really, it was only once it was alloyed to the reprinting of my birth, that they were going to reprint my birth, and they thought that would be sort of an interesting pairing, having to do with reproductive health care, that I was able to push on it and get the book made too. Maybe I'm being naive and I'm on all sorts of lists. I have no idea. But I like face to face, it's actually been, I've had so many allies that it's been a relatively smooth ride.
You had a question?
Yes, the question is for Mariette. First of all, the first photograph on your slide is
Should we go back to it?
beautiful and striking.
Thank you.
A lot of the photographs, almost all of the photographs, are very intimate moments that are shared, and I would like to know how, as a photographer, do you approach capturing these intimate moments?
Well, I am not scary. When people see me with the camera, they don't freeze. They don't, and I don't know, they can feel that I'm on their side somehow. Not so, I mean, and I'm friendly. You know, I come to people and maybe I say hello, you know, or ask a question, or in the case of the births, I was asked to photograph them. With trans people, I got a very good reputation very quickly for my work. And there really wasn't anybody else doing what I was doing. And they, as I said, they knew I was on their side. And so they were already reassured before I approached them, I would say.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes.
I also have a question concerning the people that are in both of your works. How do you approach, and Carmen, you talked about it a little bit, but like, how do you approach protecting them, but also using their image in some ways of like, they want their names on it, but that can have consequences. And are there things that you think about as you took the photos, as you display them, that have to do with like the identity of the person? And could you talk a little bit about both sides of using your image?
Sure. Yeah, so as I mentioned, like 99+% of the people in the pictures are clinic workers, and many of them have been on the scene for a very long time. So even if they don't work there anymore, they like own the bakery down the street, or like they're retired and now their niece works there, or whatever the case. So a whole other, oh, there's so much to say here. I'm going to try to keep it compact and say maybe I'll say two things. First is that photographing or even collecting photographs doesn't happen until, like, in my case, sometimes years into knowing people. Like, I would never show up with my camera or my scanner or something if I'm just like coming to talk with somebody and demonstrate like a sense of shared purpose and, you know, like a commitment to some sort of reciprocity, you know, that like, I'm not just gonna come in and be extractive. That took me a really long time to learn, and I made various fuck-ups with it along the way. So there's that piece of it, and then on the back end, working with a friend and assistant, there was also a very long campaign, actually, to figure out who everybody was in every picture, which was impossible, but also a kind of education. I mean, the spreadsheets we had, and it was just yet another way for these women, and they were most of them women, and some trans people, and that was really it, like people who worked in clinics, to be generous towards me, like to sit with me for hours, you know, over Zoom, going through photographs and being like, oh, I think that's Rebecca. What was her last name? You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna follow up with, you know, so just like incredible amount of dedication from the beginning until forever, really. So again, like I will make mistakes around it, and there's some photographs that I felt like, oh, I'm not sure if this is a patient or not, so I'm not gonna show it, or this is so-and-so's kid at Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, I don't think that their kid should be in there. So, you know, sort of somewhat arbitrary, but trying to like make ethical rules for myself as I went. And I mean, I just had a phone conversation today, actually, with someone who I didn't meet until after this project went up. So it kind of, it's like organic, it kind of carries on, but it's a big, thorny question. And it's one that I've come to, I used to fear it, and now I feel like it's the most generative part of it. It's like the engine of the work is figuring out how to get to know people, you know, and like engage in community with them. It's hard to talk about it without sounding kind of corny, but that is actually true.
Well, I feel like my work is always a collaboration with people. And I won't photograph anybody who isn't into it, obviously. And I do have releases. I have to get releases. And I would say in the 80s also, I did a lot of taped interviews. So that was when people told me about their lives. And that's in Transformations. I have edits of the conversations. But I'm not sure what else I can say about this. I feel like people gradually open up, and especially if I'm photographing somebody, we are in an intimate space, you know.
Thank you both very much. I think your presentations dovetailed really nicely with each other. It's given a lot of food for thought. So thank you all for coming. You're welcome to look at the books for a little while. The library will be closing soon, so please make your way out.
Oh yeah, it ends at 7:30.
It ends at 7:30. The library starts closing around 7:45. So yeah.
I went to Ohio State.
Oh, you did. Go Buckeyes or something. Are